thought I'd just take the first few minutes here just to give you a little bit of background on myself. Our attendance is a little too large to do invitations or introductions on everybody, but at least so maybe give you a little bit of confidence where this is coming from or not. I'll give you my quick rundown, as well as the what we're going to cover today. Again, basically the introduction we'll start with. I'm going to talk about some basic training principles, which are going to consist of the idea of progressive overload, or the training principle of progressive overload, and specificity. And some of you had some questions about that, like how much should I swim, bike, and run? And some of you went a little bit deeper about how should I be training swim, bike, and run in terms of intensities and things like that. So we're going to kind of lay the foundation for that. Then I'm going to show you some tools that I use to inform how to progress your load and kind of manage the specificity, and so where you're directing your training. We'll talk a little bit about training zones, kind of these all tie together. So different intensities that you can be training at to elicit different physiological benefits. And again, tools to measure and quantify some of those. So again, it's going to range in, I'll say, sophistication. We have people that are brand new to triathlon, never done one before, to people who have been training for decades. So hopefully I can give as much value as possible. But my background, I started in triathlon 25 years ago, actually almost exactly 25 years ago now. That's me with long hair, if you ever wanted to see a scary picture in the old Rip and Hammer singlet. So I've been doing sport for quite some time. I started actually, I'd say, coaching, instructing when I was 14 as a volunteer swimming lesson instructor, and taught swimming lessons all the way through to my 20s. So kids and adults, I've pretty much seen it all on the swimming front. I went to Brock University and I graduated with an honors degree in kinesiology, and I was really focused in exercise physiology. I took the CSEP exercise physiologist course. Advanced training principles I really dug into because while I was at university, I also swam on the varsity swim team for 4 years, and it was really interesting being able to apply the knowledge I was learning in class to actually my own training. And that was really my first introduction, I would say, to real high-level training, where we swam a lot. I am certified in NCCP level 1 and level 2 swimming, NCCP swim skills coach. I'm an NCCP triathlon community coach. And like I said, I started swimming on the varsity team, and that kind of opened the door to competitive swimming, which obviously is a lot different than swimming lessons. So through university, I started coaching the junior swim clubs. I progressed into being the head coach of the Brock Niagara Masters Swim Club, which I did for over 8 years. Even after I graduated, I ran many junior tri clubs over the summer, and when I graduated university, I did spend some time working as a personal trainer and kinesiologist before I kind of found my way back to I'll say facility operations, where I started running a water park in Niagara Falls, and then that led to running the H2O Center here in Kelowna, which brought me out west. Sorry, I should say I was from Ontario, if you didn't know where Brock University was. So I ran the H2O Center for 10 years. While I was doing that, I always had a coaching side hustle. I worked with the Kelowna Triathlon Club since 2010. Again, more part-time. Coached athletes one-on-one part-time. I was an indoor cycle instructor. I won't say spin instructor because it was a little bit different, or at least my focus was a bit different. And I raced as much as I could around full-time job, side hustles, starting a family with my wife, and now 2 beautiful daughters. And I know the challenge of amateur athletes and trying to balance everything. At the start of 2020, I went all in on coaching, and I now run the Kelowna Triathlon Club. I work with many athletes one-on-one, online. And I'd say most recently, I've added the race director to my resume, running the Cherry Blossom Triathlon for the last 3 years. I'm also the vice president of the Apple Race Series, which puts on the Kelowna Apple Triathlon and the Apple Marathon. And this year, we're going to be starting up the inaugural Kelowna Kids Triathlon, which I'm really excited about. This will replace the Tri Kids race that used to happen here in Kelowna, and that one's going to be a blast, I think. I'd say what I'm most proud of today is that I'm still racing, I'm injury-free, and I'm performing better than I was in my 20s. And that's kind of what I want to share with you today, is how I do all that. So that is, oh, I forgot all my pretty pictures here. That's me in the swim club. A little bit more bulk. I was a 50 meter, so a little more bulky than I am now, but there's some of the men's team there down in, we'd go down to Fort Lauderdale for training camp every year. A little junior tri club that we were running back at H2O with good old the Rattels and Luke Way, local coach, spin instructing, and racing Ironmans, and again, still doing it and loving every minute. So training is simple. in the most simplest terms. Basically, you apply some sort of training stress, and then you allow your body to rest, recover, grow stronger, and repeat over and over and over again. Now, when I first started training for triathlons, I probably did what a lot of people do, which is I just had no idea what to do. So I just went and swam continuously. I do 1,000 meters as hard as I could over and over and over again. Same with the bike and same with the run. And sometimes I'd put them all together, the exact distance of the race that I was trying to train for, which I started with a try actually out of a local high school, 400-meter swim, 16-kilometer bike, and 3-kilometer run. And I crushed all those kids on mountain bikes with my new fancy road bike that I bought with never doing a triathlon before. And then jumped up to the sprint distance. And again, that's just how I trained. And I thought if I just did that over and over and over again, I was going to get really good. And I got better, but eventually what happened was I just got injured. And that was it. Had to take quite a bit of time off and kind of rethink my training strategy. So I'll say tonight, and those of you that haven't been injured, again, congratulations. I always say it is part of the sport, no matter how much we want to avoid it. Things come up. But what we're going to talk about tonight has just as much to do with preventing injury as it does to optimizing performance, because it really is a fine balance. And I'll tell you, there's nothing worse, as anyone that raised their hand there, and sorry, you can put your hands back down. There's nothing worse than putting in a ton of effort and not being able to start a race or starting injured, because you know you're already starting on the back foot. And what's even worse is being sidelined from something that you really enjoy. And the harsh reality is that you never want to do it more than when your body doesn't let you. So again, this is just as important about safety as it is about, again, performance. Now, my AI graphic image generator here, bear with it. My wife walked in like, what are those? This is my symbolism of stress and rest. So again, training principles, super easy. All you're doing is applying stress to break your body down, and then resting, rebuilding, and growing stronger. What I see amongst athletes time and time again, and I'd say the biggest mistake that I made was I totally neglected the rest side. There's usually a mind shift that I start with my athletes, in that, we're often programmed by whatever we've learned in the past that, no pain, no gain, work harder. The harder you work, the better you're going to get, or the faster you're going to get. I can actually say flip that, where when you're working hard, when you're beating yourself down, that's when you're getting slower. Performance decreases. And if you do it for long enough, your performance will stay low for a very, very long time. Recovery, it's the rest. That's when you get faster. And, I grew up with idolizing guys like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and you can sleep when you're dead and all that kind of stuff. No, it doesn't work like that, unfortunately. It really needs to be in balance. Again, you need to apply the physical stress so that you are creating damage. But again, equally as important is you allow the time for the body to repair. And if you don't do that, you'll stay down. I had a conversation with an athlete this week, actually, who I had to refer to an expert, where he overtrained for 70.3 last year, to the point of overtraining syndrome, I believe, because we are now 6 months past the race, and he has zero energy. He can't push any watts. His heart rate's through the roof. And he's like, I don't know what happened. So again, when you are applying physical stress to your body, it can be dangerous if done improperly. We're not even talking about, some of the chronic injuries we sometimes get with knee pain or hip pain. This is hormonal. And when it's suppressed to the point where, again, overtraining syndrome is a thing, it can take months, if not years, to recover. Some of you that have dealt with some of those musculoskeletal injuries, it can take months or years to recover. And again, what that does on the mindset, on the mental health, really does matter. So to take this seriously, at the end of the day, in the last slide, it's really about listening to your body. That does take time and experience to understand what signals your body is sending you. But hopefully today we're going to be able to, I'd say, marry a little bit of science with feeling. So I'm going to stop there for a sec. If anyone has any questions, feel free. You can raise your hand or throw it in the chat. Looks like everyone's pretty good so far. I'll keep pressing on. So progressive overload is exactly what it sounds like. You are just overloading or loading the body, but progressively. I'd say this is a number one. There's going to be a lot of number one mistakes I see. Number two mistake that I see, and I often get asked as a coach to do, is you have your current state of fitness, wherever that might be. And a lot of our topics, have, I'll always say they're individualized, where questions that are asked, a lot of my answers are, it depends. And where you are right now, you're in a state, but where you can progress to does have a lot of factors, like your previous training history, your genetics, your current health, your current life. Is it stressful? Is it relaxing? Et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of factors that come into, again, where you are now and what will dictate where you want to be. But essentially, just like the idea of, if I work harder, I'll get faster, and neglecting the whole recovery side, where that's actually where you get faster, you can almost flip the idea of building for a race as well, where a lot of athletes go, okay, I'm training for this race, whatever it might be. We'll go extreme and say, I want to do an Ironman. So what do I have to do to get to the Ironman? And unfortunately, it's the wrong way to think about it, because I'd say for most people, that ramp build, whatever that angle is, there's no science behind this, it's just a random slide, may not align with your current ability to build for that race. So to put in a race and then work backwards on a training plan doesn't necessarily work, because that may bring you to here, which means your starting point needs to be higher. So what a lot of athletes do is they'll just start higher. If you're not doing any running and you just decide to go out and run a 10K, which I see all the time, that's too much from going couch to 10K in one go. I would even say if you haven't been doing any running, a 5K, which is what a lot of people go out and do just because it's a nice round number, is too much. Really, you probably should be starting with 10-15 minutes of walk-run combo, and see how your body feels after that. You should never be hobbling, trying to get off the toilet. That would be a little too much. And you're going to test those limits. I still test those limits and go, oh, yeah, you know what? I haven't been in the gym for 6 months. Maybe I shouldn't have lifted that heavy. And over time, hopefully you learn those lessons and you're able to adjust your loading in the future. But again, there is some trial and error. But the worst mistake is, again, starting a little high, and you get going, things are going all right for a little while, and you can handle that training volume for a couple of weeks, couple of months, and then things are going to start breaking down, and again, probably going to get injured in some way, shape, or form, or things are just going to fall apart a little bit. You're just going to be absolutely exhausted, and again, just need a little bit more rest. So what I typically say to my athletes is we need to work with where you are now at this exact point, understanding all those other factors of your training history, again, your current situation, how much time you can dedicate, all those other inputs that have an impact on stress. When we're talking about training, we can't do it in isolation of everything else going on in your life. If you're going through a busy time or a stressful time at work, that's going to impact. If you're going through major life changes, that's going to have an impact. So again, all of those inputs do matter. But you have the race. If this build is too high, then we just go with this build. Because I can guarantee you, if you do from where you are now to the best that you can do, you're going to finish the race. And where I say it depends, obviously, then we got to talk about what are your expectations. If it is just a finish, great. Let's build you from where you are. We'll get you as far as you can. You're going to show up on race day, and it's going to go pretty good. It might be harder than whatever you imagined, but again, you will finish. Now, once we start talking about, okay, you want to perform, and if your performance expectations are higher than the ramp that we can put together, then we got to have the conversation of, yeah, it's not going to happen this time, but we're going to build you to here. That means next time, after a little bit of rest, and you get back to that point, we can start a little higher and go for those performance gains. So sometimes you just need to readjust your timelines and your expectations. But again, it's always going to go a lot better for you if you consider more of your starting point and build it up than be overly concerned with, I got to be ready for this distance, so I got to get training at these distances immediately. I see it even for the cherry all the time, where the 2 weeks before the race, that pool is packed. People cram training. It's too late. But they'll show up and do it. Hopefully you guys are a little farther out of the gate and a little more proactive. So specificity, this was another question that was asked as well. There's a running joke for triathletes. Basically goes, why be good at one sport when you can be mediocre or suck at 3 sports? So obviously, as a multi-sport athlete, we're never going to be good as just a pure swimmer, cyclist, or runner, unless you came from one of those backgrounds, and then maybe you can compete in those realms a little bit better. But even when we're training across all 3 sports, again, you're never going to optimize what you could achieve if it was one focus. So one of the questions was, how much swimming should I be doing? How much biking should I be doing? How much running should I be doing? Brendan, I think this one was yours. Should I focus on my weaknesses or should I focus on my strengths? And I'm going to come back to my it depends answer. So first of all, I like to look at triathlon holistically as all three sports together, because that's really what you're doing. The swim will impact the bike, and the bike will impact the run. Actually, the swim can even impact the run. So you really need to take it all together. Depending on what you're training for, where your background is, again, this is where it can get a little muddled. If you are a non-swimmer, I would say put your focus as much as you can in the swim early on in the season and get to the point where at least you feel confident in completing the distance. That would be at minimum. You don't have to be a stellar swimmer. Usually races are not won or lost on the swim. However, again, races are not all created equal as well. So a sprint triathlon, the swim isn't as important or as big of a portion of the race. A standard, when you're swimming 1500 and only biking 30 and running 10, that swim portion's one of the biggest. Compared to, say, like a half Ironman or a 70.3, where the swim only jumps up to 1900, but the bike is over double, 90K. So, and then Ironman, well, you're going to have a really short day if you're not able to do the swim distance. I'm getting a lot of emails right now from people in the UBCO study of couch to Ironman in 1 year who have neglected to learn how to swim. And unfortunately, it's going to be a very short and expensive day if you can't swim that 3.8 in under 2:20. So again, all races are not created equal, and your background, again, matters. So swimming, I would say, nail it in the off season. That's the best time to do it. And hopefully you can get to the point where you're feeling fairly confident. And then you can start putting a little bit more focus into the biking and the running, where I'd say time dividends are going to be higher in, I'd say, the bike primarily. But again, depends on the race. And it also could even depend on draft legal or not legal. Obviously, if it's a draft legal race, then the biking becomes even less important. But most of us amateurs are not racing at drafting events. So so the bike, especially as you get to longer distances like the 70.3 or half Ironman and Ironman distance, then definitely the biking should probably make up the bulk of your volume. Running, obviously, just as important. However, you also have to consider the injury or the risk of injury for running. And the bike will have a significant impact on the run. So if you come from a run background, but your cycling is not very good, you are not going to run well. I can guarantee it if you don't put in the work on the bike as well. So again, it really depends. If you have specific questions about you personally, feel free to shoot me an email, reply sometime or whatever, and I'd be happy to give you my my best direction on where to invest your time and effort. And I will say, swimming with a team, with a coach, with my personal bias out there as a swim coach running a team, you will see much more progress than just trying to slog it alone by watching YouTube videos and showing up to the pool, primarily because to close that knowing doing gap in swimming requires a really high degree of kinesthetic feedback or body awareness or physical literacy, whatever you want to call it. And most people don't have that. I know that for a fact because anytime I video somebody swimming, they are absolutely shocked by what they look like compared to what they think they look like. So if you are looking to improve your swim, get with a group. Doesn't matter what group, as long as coach is giving you some feedback. And again, I think you're going to make a lot quicker progress. Any questions or anything you want me to dig into any deeper on this topic? Feel free to raise your hand or put in the chat. Pretty good. We're still pretty basic at the moment. But again, hopefully this is laying the foundation. So where specificity gets complicated, it's not just about swim, bike, and run. I mean, that's complicated enough sometimes trying to fit all those in. And again, I'm not sure how you do that on your schedule. Everyone has their own strategies. I'll give you a few later on. But when we get into actually talking about how do we train swimming and train our body in swimming, cycling, and running, now we're starting to open up some of the physiology. So how do you train the cardiovascular systems, your heart and lungs, your aerobic system, your anaerobic system, in between those systems, your metabolic energy system, burning carbs for fuel, burning fats for fuel. When would you want to train those? For what races? And again, training for an Ironman is going to be different than training for a sprint in what systems you want to develop. Your musculoskeletal system, training the muscles and the skeleton, again, to move the body. How much should you be doing of that? How should you be doing that? Should you be doing similar exercises to the movements that you're doing, or should you do ones maybe that you don't do much, like lateral motion, to farther stabilize and complement? Neuromuscular system, those brain-body connections. Your nervous system, you're running axons to every single muscle fiber. The speed at which those fire, the quickness of those signals, where they're attached to, the coordination, all of that comes with training as well. And again, you can get specific in how to train those better. The endocrine system, your hormones, being aware of what is happening on a daily basis to your energy as it ebbs and flows as you progress through training. That's good to be aware of. Your digestive system. You can train all you want if your gut is not absorbing the fuel you're putting in for especially longer races. And trust me on this one, it's not going to happen for you. That's a pain point for me for sure. The cognitive system, your motivation, your arousal levels, your feeling of energy on a day-to-day basis. All of this matters when, again, you're training and racing. The nervous system, all the things happening that you're impacting, but you don't have control over. Your autonomic nervous system. We have things that we're tracking now like HRV, which are measuring the electrical impulses of your heart and the distance, minute distance in those signals or those electrical pulses to determine, are you overtraining, undertraining? So there's the technology, which we will get into, is come crazy far since, well, when I started, and some of you on this call started, didn't exist. And this is kind of where I get excited in blending some of the science and technology that we now have to the good old, how does the body feel? And being aware of that. Because again, when I first started, it was, I had a speed and distance cheap bike computer, and that's all I had. And that progressed obviously into heart rates and GPS, which moved into watches and bike computers and power meters. And again, now we're wearing devices that can track our, I'll say, health 24/7 to give us feedback and help us make decisions, which again, later on for that, not tonight. So going back to the simple, apply stress and grow stronger. This is where I usually start the conversation with, again, a lot of the athletes that I'm coaching online, Training Peaks, and I'm going to go into TriDot as well for a couple of different reasons. But I'll start with Training Peaks as it's a little bit simpler, and then I will show you what the next evolution, at least that I believe, is happening. So what you're looking at here is, I should stop actually. Any questions on any of that stuff? Still been pretty quiet in the chat. I think we're pretty good. All right. So what you're looking at here, some of you have seen this chart before. Some of you have coached, or I have coached personally. Some of you have used Training Peaks, and maybe you're the rare person who actually goes and look at your metrics. But this is your performance, or this is my performance management chart. I just pulled it up for the last year. And really, we're looking at 3 data points. And this is where we start talking about using technology to quantify basically quantify our training, particularly the stress we're putting on our body and the rest that your body needs to recover. As a coach, this is the main chart that I'm looking at with my athletes as I'm developing a training plan for them. Or if I'm just creating a training plan, this is what I'm using to plug that plan into to basically quantify or visually see a representation of the progressive overload. How much are we building the stress? And this was created over 20 years ago. Dr. Andy Coggan was the founder of this. And again, kind of how Training Peaks evolved. And geez, it came from spreadsheets all the way into this more fancy software now. But the principles really stayed the same. So essentially what the athletes do is you are going to hopefully use some sort of technology. And if you don't have technology, then you can use perceived exertion. So RPE, you might hear me refer to, that stands for rate of perceived exertion. We can measure our training by heart rate. So what is our heart rate doing? Which again, when the technology was new, heart rate training was all the rave, whether you were biking or running. Swimming, heart rate doesn't really work very well. We can quantify our training by pace data. So in the pool, pace is usually what we default to. How long did it take you to swim that distance? Which means what pace did you hold? Again, our technology can do that on our watch for us. And that's pretty much the best that we have in the pool at the moment. Heart rate kind of works, kind of doesn't work. It really depends on the technology that you're using. On the bike, we can use power, which is, I shouldn't say, I'd say it is the gold standard is power. Power is power. Whatever you're putting through the pedals is what you're putting through the pedals. So if you have a power meter or you have a trainer that measures power, that is the best metric to use to track your workout, or to track your workout, record your workout, or even prescribe a workout that you're going to follow along to. Heart rate's okay. Heart rate has its limitations, though. It does have a lag. So if you're doing intervals, it takes your heart rate 30 seconds to a minute to respond to the effort, where, again, power, boom, power. Heart rate, I'm going from 100 watts to 300 watts. After a minute, my heart rate might catch up. And if my interval isn't finished, great. But if it is, it usually never even gets there. So limitations in heart rate. Physiologically as well, there are limitations where heart rate has so many other variables that can impact it, whether that be fatigue, caffeine, hydration, heat. So you really have to understand heart rates, and you have to understand all the other inputs that can impact your heart rate. And then running, typically pace is what we default to. And that works great if you're running flat. As soon as you get into hills, then you may want to default to heart rate so that you don't push too hard going uphill and see that, the pace goes way down. But again, that's where you go, okay, well, my heart rate stayed stable. I shifted to a walk, and great, I maintained my training zone, which we haven't really talked about yet, but those are just different intensities, again, to elicit those different physiological changes. And then we can now use power for running as well, but you need that technology. Stride power pods, I think, are the best at the moment. Might be buried under all my silly metals here. But a lot of technology now with the watches and heart rate monitors will have power built into it as well. So that is an option that is getting better and better. Anyway, long story short, all those feed into this chart here, which the blue line, that is my chronic training load, or sometimes termed as fitness. Now, it's not performance, it's just how much am I beating myself down and how much can my body handle that. So when I started training back here at the beginning of the chart, obviously what I could handle was at its lowest, and I slowly built. And obviously with my training history, I'm able to build a little quicker than people that are doing the first one. So this would be the progressive overload. These would, actually, I'll get there in a sec. Progressive overload, oops, I went too far. Up into a race, which actually aligns with my first race of the year. I think that was Oliver. And then we're kind of in race season where I'm kind of maintaining. And then I had one more A race in August, and I did one more little build and peaked out for that before good old off season where you can see I didn't do a whole lot. So that's the blue line, if you follow that along. The pink line, this is acute training load. So every couple weeks, I would do work, and then I would take some time to allow my body to recover and relax and absorb the training. And again, this is where performance increase happens. So as the pink line goes up, I'm getting slower and slower and more beat up and more beat up. And then finally, I get to rest for a period of time. And this is where the inverse relationship is the yellow. This would be my form. So this is where, again, mathematically, by these algorithms, this is where I'm going to perform my best, and I'm going to absorb the training and have, again, I'll be the fastest that I have been in a while. So essentially, we just repeat this, stressing out, recovering, stressing out, recovering. And the better you can do that, the more success you're going to have, or the better you're going to get. And hopefully you can figure out what the period is going to be that you're going to be able to handle to not only optimize those performance gains, but stay injury free. And I almost default to stay injury free, because you can't optimize performance if you're injured. So that for some athletes might be 1 week on, couple days recovery, another week on, couple days recovery. For some athletes, it's 2 weeks on, maybe a week off, or 3 weeks on, a week off. Some of the professionals, they might go 2 months on with little micro rests in there, of course. But again, that's really individual. I would say if you're just getting started, gauge your energy as you progress through. Probably when you get deep into week number 2, if you're feeling tired, listen to your body, bring it down. Even 3-4 days is enough time to, again, reset, absorb, and get ready to beat yourself down again. Now, the other thing to consider, which I don't show here, is even the way you structure your training. You usually don't want to do more than 2 hard days, maybe 3 if you have a lot of experience, but 2 hard days in a row before you come down and bring it nice and easy again. So, loading up and doing 3 days of hard biking and running, it's really risky. Whereas, a day of hard bike, maybe an easy swim, then maybe one more hard run, recover. Day off, maybe again, just another easy swim, then you hit a hard swim. So going up and down, that's really how you're going to gauge or get the best results going forward. Now, where Training Peaks is limited and hasn't changed in 20 years is every workout that, at least in Training Peaks, that you record using some sort of technology has a training stress score attached to it. And that's how all this data is being populated. So all training stress is time times intensity. How long did you work at different intensities? Some of you say, oh, well, I only have one intensity and we'd have to work on that. We can always go easier. But say it was an interval workout. How long did you spend going hard and how long did you spend going easy? And it'll give you a score. And in Training Peaks, it'll give you a score out of 100. So if you went as hard as you could for an hour, you get a 100 score. You can be well above 100 if, say, you were doing a 5-hour ride, or you could be under if it was an hour workout, but it had some easy efforts in there as well. So training stress is time, intensity. The problem with that is that doesn't tell the whole story. Just like all the other inputs that impact your training with life and stress and work and kids and whatever it might be, there are other things that impact the stress on your body other than time and intensity. And this is where TriDot has come in and produced better data for athletes and coaches. So what they have said or have developed is all training stress is not the same. Swimming training stress is not the same as running training stress or cycling training stress. And in Training Peaks, it's across the board. Doesn't matter. It was developed for cycling specifically, but us triathletes then just took it and used it for biking or running and swimming. So across the 3 sports, obviously training stress in swimming is going to be the lowest because you don't have impact stress primarily. It depends on your swim skill as well. Cycling is going to be actually at a lower stress level on the body than running is going to be. Running is going to be the highest training stress, primarily for impact and the whole body motion required in running. Now, yes, swimming does require the whole body, but again, you have weightlessness on your side. Not only that, temperature increases or decreases training stress. So if you're training in a hot temperature, that's going to make a big difference. Training indoors versus outdoors. If you've ever done a bike workout on the trainer, indoors with the constant effort going, that's harder than riding outside where, especially around here, you're going to have some hills and some coasting and some rest periods. So again, that's different. Your genetics play a role, and you could go to the point in TriDot where you can upload your 23andMe or whatever genome test you got, and it can change it up for you based on how genetically able you're to absorb the training stress. So in terms of, again, the sophistication of all these different inputs, and I think I forgot 1 or 2 of them, which I'm not going to dwell on because, oh, do I have them here? I have them here. For time, we're getting close to the end. Environment, yeah. Duration. That's a big one. Training stress in the first hour is different than training stress in hour number 5. So that's an extreme example. So anyway, it uses all these calculations, but it really works very similar to Training Peaks, where this blue line looks, and this, I don't have much data in my TriDot. These are the screenshots that I'm grabbing, and this is just a swim at the moment, where this is my, again, chronic training load or training stress, if you want to think about it that way, increasing. So very similar, except it includes all those other inputs. Now, the other kind of nice things, they have residual training stress. So this would be like my pink lines. But as I'm, getting tired, the inverse relationship is the green, which tells me when I'm ready to train hard. And the cool thing about TriDot is it uses its machine learning and AI technology to actually move all the workouts around for you or adjust. Maybe not even move them, but adjust the workouts based on the inputs and based on the data here, where if you were to show up and it's showing that you are totally bagged, it's not going to give you that hard workout that it had planned. And that's something that I would say goes well beyond what a coach is able to do in their analytical capabilities. 1, for capturing better training stress numbers, but 2, going in real time, day by day, or sometimes if you got 2 workouts in a day, and making those adjustments. And guarantee that's not going to happen unless you're paying someone a lot of money to watch you 24/7 and what you're doing. So this is where TriDot, I would say, now has taken what Training Peaks developed 20 years ago that kind of stagnated to the next level. This is what other platforms are using or doing as well. If you look at what Trainer Road does for cyclists, if you're looking for a cycling platform that is really just focused on developing your cycling ability, Trainer Road is doing a really good job of that. And they've used AI technology to make these adjustments similarly. Some of you did ask about platforms. I'm still a big proponent of Zwift, primarily because it does all the training stuff, but it has the fun social gamification. So for enjoyment factor, that's what I particularly use. And all these softwares do integrate. So if you have a workout planned on Triathlon or Training Peaks, you can just flip into your Zwift or whatever software you're using. Training Peaks actually has its own bike software now as well, and you just do the workout. So it kind of takes the guesswork out of it for you in terms of how hard should I be working today? Should I be going hard or easy or intervals, as well as prescribe where that should be personally to you. And this is just a look at training stress per week. So just another little chart that TriDot uses. Basically, the first bar is what was prescribed, and then the second bar is what I actually did. So this was not a good week. At least I wasn't using TriDot a whole lot. Then I used it a little bit more and a little bit more. Now I'm starting to hit it. And when you went back to the going back to the question of how much should you do of each, you can see I'm pretty balanced in training stress across all three at the moment, and that's particularly because I've inputted myself as a fairly balanced athlete. If that was different, then this would probably look a little bit different as well. Getting to the end, I only got a couple more slides left here. No questions yet. Again, feel free. You can throw them in the chat. Training zones. So these are the different intensities that you should be training at. Swimming, again, has different training zones, typically pace. There are a lot of different training zones you may find out there. And it's all just based on who did what research and who has created what scale. But in the most simplistic terms, and I'll relate them to RPE as well. Zone 1, that's going super easy. This is where you should be doing your warm-ups and cool downs. It feels like a 1 or 2 out of 10 in terms of effort. And again, you're just doing a light jog or even a walk, a brisk walk, spinning on the bike, or maybe just floating in the pool. So again, more for recovery and getting ready to hit that next interval or end your workout, flush things out, make sure you're feeling as best as possible for the next workout. Zone 2, this is where we are primarily working the aerobic system. And in triathlon, the aerobic system is pretty darn important. And I'm not going to get into all the physiology, at least tonight, but this is probably zone 1, 2, and lower zone 3. This is where 80% of your training is going to be. Zone 2, you're jogging or running easy. You can have a conversation. Breathing isn't labored. And again, this is where we spend a lot of our time. It's not sexy. It's not... you don't get out of the pool or off the bike or run and feel like you're invigorated. That was a real hard, good session, but that is the nature of endurance sports, even sprint triathlons. Zone 3, we're starting to work. Our breathing's becoming a little bit more labored. We're a parent of it. It's a moderately strong intensity, usually around a 5, 6 out of 10, depending on how you perceive effort. And a lot of our racing is done here. So sprints and standards up to 70.3s or halves. This is kind of where we live, at least on the race zone. Zone 4, this is what is termed threshold. And you'll hear this term a lot, especially even going forward. Threshold is kind of our tipping point between aerobic and anaerobic. So threshold is termed, it has a lot of different terms as well. But generally, this is the baseline that we use to set all the other training zones. So this would be an intensity you could hold for about a half hour to an hour. And after that, you would collapse and die. Usually we do tests that make you almost collapse and die, and then we can figure out all your other training zones. Maybe not initially, but if you're racing sprints, you probably spend a little bit of time in zone 4. To push up all your zones, though, this one's a really good zone to spend some time in doing intervals. And I'll talk about interval structures and things like that in future webinars as well, and how to structure all those. Zone 5 is VO2 max. We're really working hard now. This is going to be feeling like an 8, 9, probably 9 out of 10. And we're pushing that upper limit of your body's ability to use oxygen for energy. But that anaerobic system is contributing greatly. We're starting to get a little more neuromuscular adaptations happening there. That speed, the force of contractions really matters. And it's good to spend even, Just a little bit of time here, even for Ironman, if you want to maximize your performance. And then zone 6 is all out. Some of you start there and eventually work your way back to zone 4 until you stop. Again, this is kind of how I trained when I first started, but we can get way more sophisticated than that. And again, there's lots of different ways. For biking, we can go with power, or heart rate, sorry, we can go with power. I kind of hit all the limitations and benefits of each. Same with running. We got all different ones. At the end of the day, it all comes back down to just listen to your body. So the data is great. That's one piece. Your body brings context to the data. And then you can say, okay, I went a little too much. What should I adjust, or what can I bring down or up? Because it could go the other way too. My body feels great. I can push this training a little bit more. And if you're working with a coach, that communication is key. A coach cannot feel what you're feeling. I'd say that's the biggest limitation of coaches, is that I wish I could get into the head of every athlete and go, oh, geez, you're way overdoing it. Or, oh, you could have went harder, but we can't. So the better you can get at determining what your body's telling you and then communicating that, the worst thing you can do is follow a training plan perfectly. Your body doesn't work like that. Life doesn't work like that. Or follow a coach's training plan perfectly. It should never be like that. There's too many variables and things change. Even one bad night of sleep can have a pretty detrimental effect on the body and the subsequent training. So balance, that's the key. Everything in balance. Recovery, stress, life, good luck. I don't have an answer for that one. I said I would. Organization really helps. That's all I'll give you tonight because we are already at 7:30. One other thing I wanted to give you, and I can follow up in an email. If any of this is of interest in terms of softwares, you can go with Training Peaks. I have no bonus for Training Peaks. If you want to sign up and use Training Peaks, just go to trainingpeaks.com and set up a free account. You can use it for free. You have to find someone and pay for their training plan, and or just kind of wing it and collect data and see what happens. I can't copy it. Oh well. The other thing, I was going to put it into the chat, but I'll do it in a follow-up email. But for TriDot, I am a coach for TriDot now. I have recently made that shift, particularly for kind of what I talked about tonight. The sophistication of the platform is much better. I've really enjoyed using it. And if you want to use it for 2.5 months, you get a 2-week trial. And then you will get an email somewhere within that 2-week trial where you can extend for another 2 months. After that, it's paid, and you can make the decision whether you want to pay for it or not. But like I said, if you're looking to go this route, use a software for triathlon, there is a RunDot as well. I'll include that link if you're just purely a runner. But this is what I am recommending to my athletes, purely because I think it's better. It gives us all better data. Me as a coach, it gives me better data to work with. And if you're not sure where to start with a training plan or who to trust as a coach, it will just adjust your plan for you, which is pretty darn cool. So once you put all your inputs in, if you want, you can put a race in. A little later on, I'm going to show you and give you the files and how to put the cherry blossom in there.